January pressed its cool hand over the apartment complex. Mornings were pale and slow. The tiled courtyards shone with dew that never quite dried. On most days, a small brown kitten waited near the low wall, thin for her age, tail bent midway, eyes too large for such a small face. She had learned the rhythms of this place: quiet footsteps, opening gates, distant buses, and most important of all, the soft clink of a bowl near the ground floor veranda. The elderly woman who once came down from the first floor no longer appeared. Her voice, the one that used to float down the stairs with milk and rice, had faded from the courtyard weeks ago. In her absence, kindness changed shape. The ground floor lady set out modest bowls, some mornings milk, some evenings a few scraps. It wasn't much, but it was steady, and the little brown kitten lingered nearby, hopeful and careful at once. The red tabby was braver. Kittu knew where food would appear first, which car hoods stayed warm, which scooters kept the wind away. He moved like a small prince across familiar borders, and one day he paused, looked over his shoulder, and brought the brown kitten along. They reached the next veranda, the younger woman's, the one who watched them with a curious kindness. She didn't offer much, sometimes a bit of bread softened in milk, sometimes nothing at all, but she talked. She addressed the cats as if they were neighbors who understood every word. Soft remarks, small questions, a running thread of gentle sound. The brown kitten began to associate the voice with safety. She kept a little distance, but her ears leaned toward the words. That afternoon, the peace broke. Another cat, older, larger, swept through the lane and sent the brown kitten skittering. She fled without looking, scrambled past the wall, and darted into the younger woman's veranda, diving behind an old shoebox stacked near the door. The concrete was damp. The air smelled of cold stone and rain that hadn't yet fallen. The kitten pressed herself into the corner and tried to vanish. The door slid open a fraction. Light, warm, and yellow, reached across the floor. A figure stepped out and crouched, not too close. She spoke, a low, even tone that didn't demand, only invited. A thought crossed the woman's mind, simple as breath. She needs somewhere warm. Minutes later she returned with an old mat, thick but frayed, the kind of thing that had lived too many lives to be thrown away. She spread it near the shoebox and patted the edge. "Come here," she said softly. Then, as if the name had always been there waiting, she tried a sound that felt right in her mouth. "Poochie. Come here, Poochie." The kitten lifted her head. The word meant nothing and everything. It carried a tone she recognized, the sound people reserve for fragile things. The woman tapped the mat once more and did not move. The waiting was the kindness. Poochie stretched one paw forward, then pulled it back. She tried again. The pad touched cloth. Warmth traveled up her leg like a small secret. She stepped with the second paw and lowered herself, cautious, coiling small to make sure the mat would hold. It did. The soft weave cupped her like a palm. From that day, the mat was hers. In the mornings, Poochie stretched upon it until the first patch of sun crossed the floor. In the wind, she compressed herself into a tight comma and rode out the gusts. When the ground floor lady placed a bowl at her usual corner, Poochie waited until the red tabby finished and then ate the rest, never greedy, always grateful. Sometimes, if Kittu hadn't come by, she left a little and stepped back. The red tabby would appear later, push the door with a practiced paw if it stood ajar, take quiet sips, and go. The younger woman would notice an empty bowl and a barely moved mat and smile. Kittu has been here. The mat became a boundary. Kittu loved its warmth and tried to claim the middle. Poochie shifted and defended the edge with a small, steady sound. No bared teeth, just certainty. The younger woman unfolded the mat a little more, added a second cloth beneath, and the quarrels softened to a negotiation. On good afternoons they lay side by side, not touching, the space between them a truce. When other cats passed too near, Poochie called for help, a thin, urgent cry that bounced off the door. The younger woman came at once, clapped her hands, shooed the intruder, and spoke the name again. Poochie. Relief traveled through the kitten's body in a visible wave from ears to shoulders to tail, and the veranda settled into its small peace. Trust arrived in increments. The woman extended a hand, palm down, not reaching. Poochie sniffed, whiskers trembling like tuning forks. Another day, a single finger traced the air above her back and then retreated. The kitten did not run. Later still, the finger drew a light line between her ears, and she closed her eyes, just for a heartbeat, as if testing the idea of comfort. The first purr came soon after, shy, imperfect, the sound of a motor learning to start. Rain finally came, sharpening the cold. Water gathered on the edge of the veranda where the floor dipped, and drops beat a quick pattern on the scooter cover. Poochie stayed on the mat, stubborn and centered. The younger woman dragged it closer to the wall, and Poochie rode with it as if it were a raft. The courtyard blurred into gray threads. The mat stayed bright under the door's warm light. Inside, someone asked, "You're sitting out again?" "It's freezing," the woman answered with a quiet hum and a towel. Evenings became a ritual. The bowl, plain, reliable. The voice, steady, conversational. The name, now a bridge. Poochie learned that the sound called her, that it meant safety, that it could part the world a little when it pressed too close. The younger woman learned the meaning of Poochie's small signals, the tilt that meant hungry, the forceful blink that meant enough, the stillness that meant stay. She had once thought of herself as a dog person. Now she understood another language, the grammar of quiet. By month's end, Poochie looked different, not larger exactly, but more present. Her fur had a shallow gloss in sun, the bend in her tail no longer read as injury so much as signature. She sat upright more often, alert without fear. When the veranda door opened in the morning, she chose to step toward it, tail curved neatly, eyes soft. She did not want inside, she wanted this, the mat, the voice, the bowl, the stretch of floor that had learned her shape. The courtyard had changed too. The ground floor lady still set out small portions, practical and kind. Kitu still threaded the day like a bright ribbon, sometimes curling on the expanded mat if Poochie allowed it, sometimes waiting nearby on the car hood, watching with half-closed eyes. The younger woman's veranda had become a new point on the map, once a waypoint, now a home. At night, Poochie slept in the door's wash of light, a tidy curl with one ear angled toward the house. The mat caught the warmth and gave it back. The shoebox stood a little aside, no longer necessary but never moved, an artifact of a harder month that the kitten had outlived. If you passed quietly then, you could hear the softest sound, a breath, a thread of purr, the small knuckles of claws kneading a corner of cloth. And sometimes, when the world held perfectly still, another sound answered from inside, the hush of someone keeping watch, a mat, a name, a place that held. That was all it took for a stray to stay.